Yeah, 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 I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you loving is the one you're loving?
There are a lot of changes happening in the world as we speak globally. Before March 7th, geopolitically, it looked different, right? The world looked a little different. Was it March, October? I'm like so confused by where we are right now with what's going on in Gaza. When did that happen? It seems like an eon ago that Hamas came in while people were at a festival, and we now have, which no one's really talking about, our Navy ships are under siege in the Suez Canal. We're being bombed on a regular basis by people who may or may not be aligned with Hamas. I don't know. I just feel like there's opportunity right now when you see America in these spaces. Now, we're going to have to go around Africa, which is how we got the transatlantic slave trade. Anyway, I'm feeling like there's some parallels happening. We got to go around Africa. When I say we, I mean our oil companies to now deliver oil, because we cannot go through the Suez Canal because there's daily bombings happening that no one's talking about. So the gas price is going to go up. Y'all going to blame Biden. And then, vote in November. And then I want to spend an hour or two talking about politics. But I want to start with our souls, our hearts, right? And I want to ask you this question because I feel like change is something people naturally resist. Is that a natural occurrence in us? Like things that are changing, transitioning, we naturally reject it. We get angry, we hunker down, we don't want it, we run away from it. Is that natural?
I don't think it's natural. I do think it's regular to us now. I think it's normal to us now, but I don't know that I think it's natural. And I think the reason it's normal to us, meaning people in America and even generally people in the West, is we have become such slaves to materialism. And when you become a slave to materialism, what most people don't understand is that you have to become a master to maintain it. Right? And that's very important. See, if we were not slaves to materialism, what we would understand is, like the rest of the world, like the universe, like the stars, like the earth, like the leaves, transformation is the thing that actually changes, actually the thing that sustains you. It's the thing that actually makes you better. It's the thing that actually insists that you shed, that the better self might get revealed. But the minute you become a slave to materialism, what you want to do now is hold on to what you think you have, because the value is in what you think you have possessed instead of what you can become.
Okay.
And I think indigenous people understood that.
Indigenous people, Africans, folk,
Native Americans,
way. Yeah, all of the folk. So I finished this weekend, Lawman Bass Reeves. I was struggling with it because I'm not a historian, right? So let me just say that on the radio, I don't even pretend to be one. I'm a journalist. I ask questions. So I'm not sure what text they use to craft the story. It's well done. The pacing of it, it's well acted. You got David Oyelowo, of course, who's, world-class actor, Donald Sutherland, it's just world-class acting. Lauren, the woman that plays his wife and his daughter. And the acting is amazing. But I'm sitting in conflict with Bass Reeves and the decisions that he's making and all of the things that he's had to do to feed his family.
Yes.
But I'm also, because I want to talk, because you wrote The Coming, and somehow you possessed what it felt like to be snatched from your village and be huddled shoved into the hold of a ship and cross the ocean and be on, like you possess that. So I was wondering, I was trying to sit in that seat, right? If I were enslaved, if I were branded, if I were forced onto the battlefield with my master.
Right.
And a lot of us like, I would never do that. I wouldn't be a slave for long and this and that. But, I'm like, sure, 400 years of that. What else do you know? Right. And now you're free. And I'm kind of thinking about it in the terms of like, we had the civil rights movement and now we're supposedly free. But just like after emancipation, right? So Bass Reeves is free. He and his wife, they go, they build. He can't make ends meet. He's on a farm. He's like, I can't even get the crops. I got 5 kids to feed. They come to him. Can you be our lawman? And it puts him in conflict, right? Because a lot of the work is going, snatching up people who may have killed folk, who may have done some things.
Right.
But the justification was, you were brutal. You were my slave master or whatever. And yeah, I beat you in the head with this candlestick.
Right.
So I should hang for that? Okay. What about these lashes on my back and all of the rape and all? Oh, but I should hang. And we keep finding ourselves in these moral conundrums. But I'm like, I don't know if I'm on the side of Bass Reeves, but at the same time, so there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. And this is fiction, I guess, rooted in a story that was probably true.
Right.
So he has a daughter who was born into slavery, but never tasted the lash. So her growing up was with agency. All she knew was her father beat a white man. He's now going out there capturing people, shooting folk. He's empowered her mother is, so she never encounters what it looks like to cower. So she has an encounter with a little white girl. I'm giving away a little bit, y'all. A little white girl at a carnival. Mm-hmm. And little white girl stepped in front of her because the little white girl may have been 5, because of course I have agency over all Black bodies.
Right.
And she said, "Excuse me, no, line's back there." And she was like, "You don't tell me what to do." And of course, Bass Reeves' daughter was like, "If you don't get out of I will slap you." Told that little girl to go. Next thing you know, there's conflict.
Right.
And her mother's like, "What are you doing?" But I'm like, how can you be mad at a child that has never seen the trauma and the horror and the terror of being under the yoke of whiteness? And you're expecting her. And I think about it like my generation, my parents suffered through civil rights. My mom grew up in Jim Crow, Augusta, Georgia. There were colors only water fountains. She had to sit at the back of the bus. My grandmother couldn't vote. I don't know any of that. So I move differently. Is it wrong? Like and a lot of us are raising children in a world that is shifting in real time.
That's right.
And their kids are not prepared for what's coming.
That's right. See, this is such a complicated situation. It really is complicated. But the thing I think that you bring up that is so unbelievably important, that I think most of us, even as Black people, have never really contemplated. And that is when people said in 1865 that we were free, that was the wrong word. We were not free. We were set free of plantations, but we were not free. If you untie a dog, but still treat him like a dog, right? He's not on a leash anymore. But if your world calls him a stray, if somebody doesn't own him, Lord have mercy today, oh God. What is that dog's life? What is that dog's existence? If the dog does not garner respect and personhood from you, untying them from the leash only let you move them from your bondage to somebody else's. That's not a free dog. That's an unleashed dog. And that's what happened to us as Black people. If we had gotten, if you will, unleashed in a world that was forced to honor our personhood, we perhaps could have called it freedom. Yet to move around, and everywhere you move, everywhere you look, every person you're looking at, every institution you enter is prepared to reify, to reconstruct your bondage and call it a new thing. That is not what we meant by freedom.
Well, how do you know that, right? So I imagine Texas, we know Juneteenth,
right?
Galveston, Texas, last people 2 years after emancipation, folks still didn't know. And they were like, what? Okay, you got to walk off the plantation if you wanted to. You can go wherever you want. But now who's hiring you?
Right.
And now they're creating laws, because there's a parallel right now. Now they're creating laws that say if you don't have a job, you can be jailed and then put on a chain gang for 40 years. You can be arrested and imprisoned if you don't have a job. Loitering is still on the books in many cities. Y'all know if you live in a city, you can't loiter, no loitering. That's a crime, right?
Right. That's right.
It's directly rooted to Black people being free.
Absolutely.
Because There's no way you just gonna walk around and not work.
That's right.
So we're gonna get you to work.
That's right. Because the question ultimately we want to ask is, what do you own? Because America is about property and ownership. And if you don't work, clearly you don't own anything. And if you don't own anything, then you're not a human being here. Which is why we treat homeless people the way we treat them, because ultimately are unhoused now, we're saying, right? And the reason this is important is because what we're ultimately saying is we're trying to be nice enough to treat these people like human beings, which is really not even your prerogative to do, right? And so ultimately, what we're ultimately getting at, Bass Reeves' story, it is a tremendous one. It's a very complicated one, and hopefully we'll get into this later. The real issue is that America needed somebody to run Black people, to run Black radicals down. America needed somebody to hunt down recalcitrant Black folks who would not mind.
Oh, see, there's hints of it in this. 866-8018, 866-801-TALK. There are hints of it in this Lawman Bass Reeves. But I bring up Bass Reeves because many of us will find our history through art, not through actual scholarship.
That's right.
And there's no indictment. It's just easier. It's just easier to watch, which is why we have to be careful who produces. This is produced by Taylor Sheridan, who gave us, the Yellowstone franchise. David Oyelowo, one of the, and I imagine they did their homework, and it's delicate, this tightrope, because it opens with Bass Reeves fighting on the wrong side, fighting for the Confederacy, fighting in the war to keep slavery. And you immediately go, what the hell? But then you also immediately understand he's owned by somebody. And this is all you know. So you are this person's property. You're going to do what they say. So, I mean, there's all of this. But to your point, Dr. Black is here. If we're being honest with ourselves, many of us are property of something. Absolutely. Whether it's a dollar or a job, we're somebody's property.
That's right.
If we're being honest. Can we be honest? Can we be honest with ourselves? And for me, sitting here every day, I want to make sure I give you tools to unleash yourself and then free yourself to be really free, to cut the chains, and then let's build agency, because that's the only thing that's really going to, because if you're still tied to somebody's check, and we all got to eat, if you're still tied to somebody's dangling bauble that you want, if you still have the desire to want the things, then you're a slave to it. You're slave to it. Now, there's an actual other slavery going on called incarceration that we need to talk about, which we will today as well. But I just, since most of us enter to me, I look at these art pieces as breadcrumbs. We should do our own homework. Okay, what's the real story of Bass Reeves? You teach African-American studies at Clark Atlanta. Yes. By the way, were you at the Celebration Bowl this weekend?
I was not there. No, I was not there.
Okay. All right. Because it looked lit though. It looked like it was a lot of fun happening in Atlanta. All right, shout out to everybody that went. Okay, tell us what you know about Bass Reeves so we can get like a framework.
Yes, the thing I think that's really interesting about Bass Reeves, of course, most people know that he was one of the first. He was not actually historically, he was not the first Black lawman west of the Mississippi, but he was certainly the most well known. Now, the real history is, and the real question is, why in the world did they choose him? See, we got to do not just facts, but we got to do analysis in terms of American history and Black history. And they chose him because Bass Reeves was actually the most academically brilliant person in terms of who also knew the land that they had ever seen, ever. They chose him because he was just so brilliant. Bass Reeves spoke every single one of the 5 languages of the quote unquote 5 civilized tribes. He spoke all 5 languages. That's the reason they chose him. That's why they chose him, because Bass Reeves could go out west and talk to anybody. And see, most of this is not in the series. Bass Reeves could go out west and talk to anybody, and they did not fear him. Bass Reeves did not take capitalism out west. Bass Reeves understood Native Americans. Bass Reeves understood the land. He understood the land. See, that's critically important also. And Native Americans knew black folks because of the historical relationship. I won't go into all the details, but most people understand that. What I'm saying here is 99% of the time, Karen, when we have this first black person to do X, Y, or Z, it's because white folks could not afford not to have them. That's why we were the first, because they searched the world over for the equal and couldn't find it. That's the same reason Du Bois was the first to go to Harvard. Not because Harvard was kind, but because Du Bois was too brilliant to be overlooked. And the same is true with Bass Reeves. And Bass Reeves also, the third thing, Bass Reeves has a standard of character that is so unbelievable to most white folks. And the way it really gets proved is Bass Reeves has to hunt his own son down when his son has committed a crime. Bass Reeves hunts his own blood down. You're talking about conflicted. But what the man said is, if I am on the path of righteousness, the path of righteousness does not invite exceptions.
Damn it. It doesn't though, Dr. Daniel Black. Okay.
The thing is rough.
It is because your own son though?
His own son. But that's because
But let me ask you. So he held himself to a higher standard than the religion that kept him in bondage.
That's correct. And that's true for most black people though. That was very standard. That was true for your mother and mine too. For example, there were folks who treated our parents horribly, but our parents would not allow us to disrespect them. But it was true that they were treated horribly. We could not call white people out of their names, Karen. We could not do that. But our parents were not saying these white folks are righteous. They were not saying that. What they were saying is that we as a people know a thing called character and honor and righteousness. And the minute you compromise that, even for justifiable reasons, you stepped out of your spiritual contract.
All right, let me ask you this. Dr. Black is here. The number is 866-801-8255. Is that spiritual contract something constructed? Or is it a real thing? And how do you know if it's a real thing or a constructed thing? Because many of us are practicing, I'm putting up air quotes, religions that were fed to us a certain kind of way. And we practice it to the letter of the law. But in practicing it, we also deny ourselves any agency whatsoever, right? It is designed to keep us in a position of subserviency.
That's
right?
true. That's true. But in this,
how do you know? How do you know if it's actual character or manufactured character so that people can do whatever the hell they want to us without any, comeuppance?
Because this law of spirit and spirituality that I'm referencing here, this law, we did not meet in the Americas. We did not meet when we met Europeans. This law we brought with us. And here's how you know. There are two pieces of evidence. One is the proliferation of a thing called proverbs. Proverbs are in absolutely every single African community you ever find anywhere on the planet. The proliferation of proverbs is the announcement that the people believe in character before they believe in anything. The point of a proverb is to teach character unto its citizenry against all other possibilities. You must walk in high character. That is the job of a proverb, to get children, to get its citizens to see the importance of character and how living in character is what keeps you next to God. You've got to have it. You must have it. Number two, the second way you know that we bring this with us is because of the way Black folks act once we get out of, if you will, physical bondage. The thing that has always been frustrating for me, I have to admit, is why in the world didn't we turn around and kill these people? They had us enslaved. It would have been justified, it seems to me. Why in the world would we turn around and be kind to these same people? And then I figured it out. It's because the character we brought with us, death, trauma, rape, none of that erased Black people, none of that erased Black people's commitment to the inner core of what we understood to be high character. That's the core of what it means to be African. Sometimes we met it, sometimes we didn't, but it was always clear. And I'm glad you brought up the religious thing. And what's beautiful about this is that it is not a religious idea. It is a spiritual notion. It does not come along with religion. I've never seen a Black community that did not have the proliferation of Proverbs. Even Black communities here. Our parents and our grandparents told them to us all the time as a kid. It might shine, baby, but just because it glitters don't mean it's gold.
All right. This is not a conversation about Bass Reeves at all. Because I've been sitting with the hypocrisy that we live in every day and trying to figure out how to navigate it at the same time, for myself. Because I cannot open my mouth and tell a lie on these airwaves about anything. It just no, I cannot. But I'm living in my truth right now. So and my truth is evolving, right? Because it is a mutable thing. Truth is not black and white.
That's right.
8018255. So here we are. We're in America. I'm an American. I'm in a country that has this history. It's a real history. 5-6 generations. My people have been here. I'm a product of that. At the same time, I'm looking into the future of what I want to see the world become.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm seeing division and all kinds of trauma, and it looks like a car crash happening in real time, but it's always probably been this way. I just haven't seen it. And the more you know how they say ignorance is bliss. Right. The opposite is true. The more you know, the more you're like, hey, everybody, look, right. Don't you see this? And they're like, no. Okay, well, it's happening. Trust and believe. So I'm just, there's a challenge, right? And also a burning desire. Like I want everyone to know. I want everybody to know this thing, or at least be on this journey. And let's, but to this character point, I want to just sit with that because I watched CBS Sunday Morning, and they gave a great tribute to Brian Gumbel. That was nice. He's mellowed, great. And then they had a segment on this man that used to be a Secret Santa. He would give out $100 bills during this time of year. And he died. So his name, Larry Dean Stewart. We never knew his name for like 20 years. He started going out, giving out $100 bills. He gave out more than $1.2 million to total strangers during this time, up until his death. And then upon his death, he released his name. I think the year before he died, he said he was the creator of the original Secret Santa, Larry Dean Stewart. A teacher picked up the mantle in Phoenix, small elementary school in Phoenix. His name is Derek Brown. He told his students about this. He did showed a documentary on this man, and he challenged his students to do the same. So these little kids, fifth graders, went and raised, I think $8,000, and then they went out into their community and gave away $100 bills to strangers.
Wow.
The impact of this on the kids were crying. Like, wow. I can't believe the joy that I feel. Like, I want to just keep doing this. The joy that I feel in giving somebody something that they need. One lady just had a cancer diagnosis and was down to her last $20 and got this $100. Like, it was life changing. They went into areas where people need and gave away this money. And I was like, this is a seed right here. Absolutely. And what would that look like with these kids? I want to come back and follow these kids 20 years from now to see what kind of people they turned out to be. But this one teacher taught humanity, to these kids with this just simple lesson. And it's not something that could be on a syllabus. You know what I'm saying? Right. But I just was wondering how we foster that in the next generation and the next generation. And if we don't have systems by which we do that,
Yes. See, I think the thing that's beautiful about it is, of course, the money, but it's really something else I'm hearing as you're talking. And that is, it's really the act of giving. Whatever it is you give away. The thing that's so unbelievably deep about spirit and about God is God multiplies your joy in exchange for what you release. See, it's not just God favors me and just showers me with materiality. No, God's not committed to no materiality. What God will do is give you inner joy in exchange for the material things you let go of. Which is why when you die, you have to go to God empty-handed. Because God is so great and God is so marvelous that the worst thing in the world you could do is take up space with your own junk when you go before God. You want to be empty-handed. And the whole point of giving, the act of giving, is learning how to empty out your coffers, not fill them. Because when you walk with God, the joy, hey, God Almighty, when you walk with joy, the joy of God is seeing what new God will put in your hand every day. But in order for God to put it in your hand got to be empty. See, the reason most people miss God is because we bring armloads of stuff to God. God can't use your stuff.
Good love can't turn my back on that. Gotta make moves, gotta act on that. You're the one I want and I stand on that. You and me, babe, that's black on black.